Have you ever considered a change of schools for your child? Maybe you've been sending your child to public school and you have considered sending them to private school. Stick around. Today I'm going to share with you my experiences as a teacher in public schools and private schools, as well as my experiences as a homeschool mom. Hi, I'm Rebecca with the Parent Teach Bridge, where you can find the ideas and resources you need to empower you to be your child's most influential teacher. And today, I'm going to share with you what I have learned teaching in public and private schools, as well as homeschooling. And these are some things you may want to keep in mind, things that may help you make that decision as you ask questions and do your own bit of research. Before we get started, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button so you can be notified each time I upload a video for your child's education. So here's my disclaimer. This is just my list with my experiences. Your experiences may be different. I realize not every school is the same, and there's always exceptions, but these will at least give you something to start thinking about and considering. Number one, private schools often have smaller class sizes and keep the same teacher. So let me tell you a little bit about this experience that I've had. So in public school, you can have different laws in place and stipulations on how many children are in a class with the teacher. And sometimes that depends on the grade level. For instance, I was a fifth grade teacher at a school, but only for about a month, because in this particular school system, they would look at the attendance for the first 20 days of school, and then they would decide, do we need to hire more teachers or not? And what they had determined after the first 20 days is they really didn't need that extra fifth grade teacher, which happened to be me, and they did need a new third grade teacher. So I moved around Labor Day. We had been in school for about a month. I moved to third grade. So I had to say goodbye to my fifth grade class. I knew that if I stayed as a fifth grade teacher, they would just have moved another fifth grade teacher, and I would have had to take on some of her students and have as many as 28 children in a class. But by moving to third grade, a younger grade, I only had 18 or 19 students that year. Well, that was great for me, and I ended up having a pretty good year, even with that little rough start. But think about the children. Those 18 or 19 third graders I had already had a month with their third grade teacher. Their names had already been earmarked on a list. I'm not even sure their parents really even knew that until the decision came down from the central office. So after they had already gotten adjusted to that teacher, they were taken out of that teacher's class. There were about 2 or 3 from each third grade class that came to my class to build and make up my third grade class. As you can imagine, some parents were not pleased with this movement in the classrooms. I haven't necessarily seen that happen with my private school experiences. If anything, they might have enrollment down and a teacher may have to switch grade levels, but she would know that before the school year started. So that's something to keep in mind. And just because the classes might be smaller at a private school, it doesn't mean you'll always get the teacher you want, and it doesn't mean that the class sizes will be as small as you want. I was tutoring a 9th grader the other day who was new to a private school, and he happened to comment, I thought we were going to have much smaller class sizes here. So be sure, parents, when you go on a tour, to ask those questions about class size and if there's any condition under which that would change. Hi, parents. Is your child struggling to read or even hates to read? And nothing you have tried has worked? Get my free guide, 5 quick tips to immediately help your struggling reader. I'm going to show you the simple tricks that I've used for years to successfully improve children's reading and their confidence in reading. It's easy, it's simple, and it's free. Just go to theparentteacherbridge.com/reading help. You can find that link in the description below. Number 2, this one is about public schools. I believe in my experiences that public schools have more diversity as far as the student population. Now that might be their demographic, their income level, their race, even their learning capabilities. I've seen more diversity in my public school experiences. And because of that, it actually gave me lots of experiences as a teacher working with students that had special needs or students that came from different backgrounds. Some of my friends who have only taught in private schools haven't had as much of that diversity. So I think that definitely sending your child to a public school gives them plenty of opportunities to learn how to work with other children, to be compassionate with other children, and so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that they can't learn that at all in a private school. Definitely in private school, I have had students with learning needs, and that gives your child a chance to help out a friend. Don't assume that at a private school they are all completely evil just because they happen to lack diversity. I just speak this as a matter of fact that it's something that I have noticed. So if you do make that choice to send your child to a private school and you feel like there's not as much diversity as you like in your child's life, you might want to seek out other opportunities for them to try to make friends in other social circles. And while we're on the topic of diversity, let's touch a little bit on bullying. I believe that bullying can happen anywhere. I've definitely known children that have suffered from it in private school as well as public school. But one difference that you might want to consider is that in public school, where the schools are larger, generally speaking, and they have more diversity, your child can usually find a group, even if it's a small group, to kind of hang out with that they have more similarities with. Sometimes when your child makes that move to private school, if they don't find a group for themselves in that private school, it can lead to bullying, especially if they're not a particularly confident and outgoing child. So just keep that in mind. You know your own child better than I do, and just kind of keep an eye on it. It doesn't mean just because you make the switch to private school that all the problems disappear and that bullying doesn't exist. So check on your child. Number 3, something in my experiences is that private schools have more rigor and homework. I can think of certain experiences I've had teaching public school where a principal might tell me, don't assign this much homework. Or if I taught math, you can only give 10 problems a night. Okay, well, let's think about that. If I'm teaching 6th grade math and I can only give 10 problems homework each night, but down the road at the local private school, those kids have 20 or 25 problems of math each night, or on the nights that they do have homework, they're getting twice the amount of math practice as their public school counterparts. And the way that I've seen this work out with students is that if they do transition to a private school after they've been in public school a number of years, they can feel like they are a bit behind. And honestly, they usually are. That doesn't mean that every public school lacks rigor or doesn't have great teachers. In the low-income public schools, I've seen great teachers in private school. I've seen burnout teachers in public school, and I've seen burnout teachers in private school. Neither one has a monopoly on great teachers, but something to keep in mind and prepare your child for is that extra rigor and homework that they may have in front of them if they transition to a private school. When I taught 6th grade at a local private school, there were many children that were coming out of the public school system to avoid going to public middle school. When they entered 6th grade, the general rule that the 6th grade teachers followed was that the children had to write in cursive all the time. Well, we would get this influx of children coming from public school that did not know how to write in cursive. So that was a little bump they had to work through. Most of them succeeded, but that first month or so was a little bit difficult for them to adjust. It was doable, but just keep in mind, Ask those questions when you go on those tours. See what you might need to do. You might have to hire a tutor or take an online course to get your child caught up to where they need to be so that they're not swamped with struggling with homework or feeling behind when they have extracurricular activities that they would like to be involved with. Number 4, private school teachers may have different qualifications and experiences. Now keep in mind, you might have a teacher kind of like me where they've taught in public and private and they've had both of those experiences. But many times the private school teachers know that except for their lower salary, they have things made at their school. There's a lot of extra problems that they don't have to worry with that the public school teachers do have to worry with. So there may not be as much turnover of those teachers and they've stayed there a while. In that case, it doesn't mean they're not certified to teach your child, but they may not have had extra training and exposure to certain learning disabilities and conditions that children have. So if your child has a special need or learning condition, be sure to educate your child's teacher on that before the school year begins because they may not have had the experience. Doesn't mean they don't have a caring heart for your child, but they may have never had a student like your child before because there generally seems to be less diversity in the private schools. Along with that, some private schools are faith-based schools and they have extra qualifications for those teachers even in their life outside of school. So that might be a positive that you might be interested in for enrolling your child in a private school. I hope that caps the differences in private school and public school for you. There's some obvious things such as you have to pay tuition for private school and so on. These are just my experiences. Your experiences may be different. Leave a comment below if you think that I forgot something, some big difference that you've had in private school versus public school. I have lots of friends who have their children in both. Sometimes there's a split family situation where one child's enrolled in private, one's in public, and the same with homeschool. I homeschool my children, but I have friends who have homeschooled one year and put their children in school the next. No judgment on your decision. You do what's right for your family. Don't forget my free guide, 5 quick tips to immediately help your struggling reader. You'll find that in the description below. Click like and subscribe. And remember, you are your child's most influential teacher.